Hello. This is an Ignite Infernalist that uses a charm for literally all of its damage. This build revolves around Beira's Anguish, a unique charm that was added in Dawn of the Hunt. It is used when you become ignited, and you ignite enemies in your presence as though dealing fire damage equal to 500% of your maximum life. So, how do you become ignited consistently? Well, I'm using Grinning Immolation on the Infernalist Ascendancy, which has the line that says, become ignited when you deal a critical hit. The rest of it doesn't matter. And to crit consistently, I'm using Thorns, funnily enough. Briar Patch, unique boots, give 25% to base Thorns critical hit chance. By default, Thorns has no critical hit chance. So this adds 25, and Thornhide on the tree gives another 6%. This, combined with this cluster here of crit nodes, and this cluster here of crit nodes, gives, with base 25%, gives you 76.5% chance to crit, which is plenty. The boots I'm currently using are borked, but they have slightly higher base thorns, and gives me an extra 15%-ish. Thereabouts, give or take. So that's how you crit. That's how you ignite. So, what else is important? Pragmatism. So the Pragmatism body armor is the one of the two sort of core components, I would say. Briar Patch boots and Pragmatism. Pragmatism because it has the line charms use no charges. So that means that your charm is always ready when you crit, basically. That being said, charms can only be used when they're not currently active. So that means that if, say for example, base, your charm has a 3-second duration, it means you have to wait for that 3-second duration to be up before you can trigger it again. This, in effect, for this build, doesn't really make a difference. I was experimenting with a new build that they added this patch as well, Bijouborn, for the line that says reduced charm effect duration. I don't think it really matters. It's the difference between like a perfect roll of 50% reduced. It's like a second and a half, but so long as your ignites last longer than 3 seconds, you'll always have your ignites up, basically. So this belt gives some flat mana, reduced charm effect duration, 2 charm slots, which won't matter. They said recently that they are planning on adding charm slots to implicits on belts, I believe. So I'll probably upgrade from this pretty soon. It hasn't been a problem yet. It's starting to become a problem though, because it doesn't have resists, it doesn't have life, it doesn't have strength, and so on and so forth. These are all pretty important stats for this build. Now, it does have the implicit grant skill cast on charm use. For this build, it is unusable because it specifies when a charm is used, gain 2 energy per charge used. Because of Pragmatism, you use no charges, which means you cannot proc this at all. So if you are going to use Bijouborn, if you're going to just try and set this up for as cheap as possible, even to be fair, a rare belt is probably still cheaper, or more worth the money. But still, if you do go for Bijouborn, completely ignore cast on charm use. The only thing it's going to do is change the required level for the belt depending on what level it was dropped at. Because obviously this can go up to level 20 cast on charm use. I have been experimenting with an idea on Ritualist to turn this into something, but that's an idea that I may or may not actually flesh out. And if I do, I'll probably do a video on it if it works out well. Anyway, the rest of the gear, Crown of the Pale King, not mandatory, but a huge quality of life sort of item. because by default Thorns can only retaliate against melee attack hits, so strikes and slams. It can't retaliate against projectiles, either attack or spell, or any other kind of spell, or any other kind of generic hit. So this that's why I use Crown of the Pale King, is basically just quality of life. It has decent. It has a decent possible life roll up to 80 at max roll. With corrupt, it could go even higher. I have a shit roll, and I'm too lazy to change it, but I probably should. So that's why I use that. The rest of the items, junk, absolute garbage. You could, for a handful of exalts and some peanuts, you could get far better items than what I'm currently using, and you probably should, because, yeah. So basically, the items I'm using this is literally just Chaos Res, a little bit of Lightning Res to get me capped, some Strength because it was there, and Mana. I'll explain why Mana is good in a second. This one, Strength, Dex, Res, that's kind of it. Life, Mana, Strength, Res, on a base you don't care about. You could obviously get much better bases than this, an Amber base, or any other base that would help you with your stat requirements for other stats that you don't really want to scale. Gloves, a little bit of armor. I'm thinking I'll probably change this. I'm heading towards Eldritch Battery right now, so I might completely just forego any excess armor I can and just go straight into Energy Shield to turn it into mana, because we are converting some of the damage taken to mana taken before life, and that's why mana isn't too bad of a stat, because it's kind of like contributing to a second life pool. Shield, same thing. It's junk I picked up off the ground. It's level 48. This character is like level 74 or something right now, or 76. So all of this gear could be much better, and what you see in this video could definitely be improved. Wand, this is so the damage as extra fire is good for this build, because although this doesn't hit, where it says that it ignites as though dealing fire damage equal to 5% of your maximum life, it will store that number as a flat damage value and then ignite based on that value. So if you have percentage of damage gained as extra fire, that will scale off of that. So say for example, just hypothetically, your 500% of your maximum life was 1000 fire damage, then that would be 25% more fire damage, basically. So that's why that's good. Increased fire damage, self-explanatory. Mana, I explained before, you're kind of using your mana pool as like a damage buffer. Life per enemy killed, mana per enemy killed, not super important, but it's like a little bit of quality of life sustain. It can be pretty good. You are using cannibalism and herbalism to help with life sustain anyway, so it's not like super duper important. You can forego it if it's cheaper. This was super cheap. This was like a 2 exalt wand, so you could probably get better. I was looking at the scepter. I can't remember the name of it, but it gives like between 40 and 60% damage as extra fire, but it's like super expensive. So if you've got shitloads of money, it might be worth if you really enjoy the build, but for otherwise, this is perfectly fine. The other option is, you can technically use this instead of the wand if you wanted to. This is what I leveled this character with mostly, is Scythe's Spear. Aggravating any bleeding with this weapon also aggravates all ignites on the target, and it has between a 25% and a 40% chance to aggravate bleeding on hit. You use this in conjunction with, or rather in combination with Rake. Rake has a 100% chance to bleed, so you don't need to worry about getting bleed chance. Rake is a strike, which means that you can use Barbs. Barbs is a new support gem that only supports melee strike skills, and after you have retaliated with Thorns, your next 4 hits with that strike will deal your Thorns damage. Now this isn't scaled with attack damage, this isn't scaled with like the skill itself, it literally is whatever your Thorn damage is that you would retaliate with, that's what it deals. So that means that this is another way for you to proc the self-ignite. And also, if you wanted to get rid of Crown of the Pale King, this would give you an option to, or this would give you the ability to proc your Thorns on enemies that don't use melee attacks. To finish on Rake, I have Bullseye and I have Life Tap. You don't have to use Life Tap. You could probably use like Martial Tempo or something like that. Bullseye is just because you're not scaling dexterity very much, you're not scaling accuracy, so it has a pretty bad chance to hit. If you had 4 slots on your Blasphemy, you would be able to use Precision, which gives you a lot more chance to hit, probably around about like 95% in Tier 14 maps. I currently have an 87% chance to hit any Tier 14 map right now. This is a white Tier 14 map, it's not super special, but I'm currently running Tier 6, Tier 7 maps myself on this character, but I wanted to try this, so we'll find out how bad that is together. I'll finish on the skills, fuck it. Incinerate, because this was recently buffed. The main reason that we're using Incinerate is because at max stacks, so basically, Incinerate gains stages every tick. The faster your cast speed, the faster you gain stages. At max stages, you apply a 4% fire exposure that stacks up to 50%, and this can be scaled with support gems like Strip Away and nodes like Overexposure, which increase the effect of exposures. So we have Strip Away for that, we have Mobility, so you move a little bit faster while you're using it, Arcing Tempo to gain stages faster. With Strip Away, this is around about 60%, minus 60% fire res, which is crazy. You basically strip any mob to 0 or negative, combined with Blasphemy, which I only have basically for the support gems and also to remove a button. You could use basically any other buff and just self-cast flammability on bosses or particularly tanky rares. Blasphemy itself has a 40, or has a, I think it's like 50 to 40% less, depending on the level, effect of your curses, so it does really reduce the effectiveness of it. But it applies in an AoE around you, as does your Ignite, so it's kind of like, it synergizes relatively well. On this we have Cannibalism, 2% of max life recovered on kill, very good for sustain. Herbalism, increased recovery from life flasks, is actually really strong. It doesn't sound like it will be, but it's really good. I was using Vitality before I switched to Herbalism, but it's at my current life value, like 2000 life, it's like 20 flat life per second, which is really negligible in comparison to how much you gain from Herbalism. And that's literally the skills. There's nothing else. You use Incinerate to apply fire exposure where you can be bothered. You use Blasphemy just for the supports and also to remove a button. And you use Rake in a weapon swap to aggravate ignites, which you don't really need to do, but it can be good against bosses if you want to kill it a bit faster. But if you're lazy or you don't really care too much, you can completely forego Rake entirely and Scythe the Spear and reduce your dex requirements by a fair bit. So that's kind of the skills and the items. Next is the tree itself. As I said before, you're an Infernalist. I've only done 2 Ascendancies so far because there's not really anything else that I care too much about. Grinning Immolation's your first one. This is build enabling. Without this, your build literally will not function. Altered Flesh is kind of just a passover node. I have no max fire res, so it really doesn't make a difference. And my chaos res sucks, so this physical damage taken as chaos isn't really doing too much either. But the small nodes give 3% increased max life each. So you have a total of 12% increased maximum life from these. And then I'll probably, if I do take this far enough to get the 4th Ascendancy, I would grab, obviously, the small node and probably Beidat's Gaze for the maximum mana. Now, the only time that you would ever bother taking this is if 25% of your maximum life is less than the mana that you would gain from this node, for this build specifically. Because if you reserving the life doesn't take it away from you, so it doesn't impact your damage in any way. So yeah, that's probably what I would do for, this is your 1st Ascendancy, this is your 2nd Ascendancy, your 3rd you could take 2 of these nodes, and then your 4th you could take the other node and then Beidat's Gaze. You don't really have much use for Spirit, and you don't have much use for Energy Shield at all, unless you wanted to go into Beidat's Hand and Beidat's Gaze, and then take Eldritch Battery to convert it all to mana. That would effectively give you like 2 mana per X life kind of thing. So that's an option if you wanted to try that. I currently have not done that. But now to the actual passive tree itself. As I said before, you need to crit. So 1 crit wheel here, 1 crit wheel here gets my current boots to 89% crit. On base, it'll be 76% crit. Strength for all of these, because every point of strength gives you 2 flat life. We path all the way down here first to grab Thornhide for base crit chance. Then down here to grab Beef. This is a good chunk of strength for 2 points. These nodes here give you 3% increased max life and 10 strength, so this is like 20 flat life and 3% increased max life, because GGG are allergic to giving you percentage life nodes for some fucking reason. This here is really good element magnitude and duration. This is like 54% magnitude and 20% duration for your ignite. I have a weapon swap that literally comes down to this for 10% increased chance to aggravate bleeding, or 10% chance to aggravate bleeding on targets hit with attacks. Don't bother with this, it really doesn't make a difference. On a well-rolled Scythed Spear, you have like 40%, an extra 10% really doesn't make enough difference for you to bother with weapon sets and shit like that. We also have, because Beira's Anguish ignites enemies in your presence, we can skill that using the presence area clusters that they added in this last patch. So we have 4 here for like 85% presence, and also 3 here for another 65%, if I can count. This also gives 5% spirit. You don't really give a shit about that. Other nodes up here besides the crit node, we have 4%, 4%, and 8% damage is taken from mana before life. We have over here, we have 4%, 4%, and then 20% of damage taken recouped as mana. I am using a From Nothing Jewel for Necromantic Talisman. You don't really need to care about this. I was trying it out. I don't think it's worth it. It was pretty cheap. It was like 15 exalts or something like that for the jewel. So if you want to, you can save a couple of points here, and instead of putting them into this, you can grab 3% increased max life and mana. Again, you don't care about energy shield, and then 3% damage taken recouped as life and mana. These aren't really noticeable. Recoup is pretty bad in Path of Exile 2. In Path of Exile 1, it was recoup would occur over 4 seconds. In Path of Exile 2, it's 8 seconds. So it's twice as long, and it is noticeable, especially if you've played Path of Exile 1. The other nodes we have are Firestarter for minus 5% fire res. You're always going to be igniting. It's literally the only way you deal damage. So you're always going to have this active. And then Slow Burn for 20% increased ignite duration and 20% increased magnitude of ignite. We also have 50% increased elemental damage from these and 5% LA res. Just helps with hitting res cap. And then I've anointed mental perseverance for another 10%. This gives you a total between these two here, this notable here, and this little cluster here. You have 34% of damage taken from mana before life. And it does help having that little damage buffer, and it gives you, it lets you use both your life flask and your mana flask to sort of help keep yourself alive. I am res capped. My chaos res sucks extremely bad, and it is noticeable. So if you have the currency to do it, try to obviously get as much chaos resistance as you can. And then if you really wanted to, you could maybe grab the fire res nodes. It might not be worth it, I don't know. So that's kind of it. I will say one quick thing, is because Scythe of Spear is in a weapon swap for Rake, when you use it you do have to swap first, and then you have to swap back to sort of switch back to Incinerate, which is a bit clunky if you don't have any weapon swap speed. However, Rake can be cancelled by blocking. So if you can actually block, you can cancel the animation of Rake to switch back to your other weapon slot just by blocking. So that means that if you hit with Scythe as Spear, you can block to cancel the rest of the attack and instantly get back to your full defensive sort of thing, so you're not just eating shit for the sake of hopefully getting the aggravate. So we're going to go into this and hopefully not die. This is a tier 14 map. Monster level 79. I am currently level 76. I am doing tier 6, tier 7 maps. But generally, this is kind of all you need to do. You don't even actually need to use Incinerate. You hold up your shield, you walk into stuff, you try and not get stunned. And stuff just gets ignited around you and dies. I'm stuck on. So, okay. That was a good showcase. I have noticed performance has been pretty bad this last patch, and this charm definitely does not help with all the ignite calculations. But this is what I was saying about chaos res. A big chunk of the damage that I took there was chaos damage, and that's why I got fucked so bad. That rare had regenerate life mod on it, so and you can see that I've not used any skills at all. I've not bothered using Rake. I've literally just been blocking attacks. Obviously some enemies you can't block, because by default, if you're not a Warbringer, you can only block strikes and projectiles, not slams. But yeah, it's righteous fire at home kind of build, I guess. I wish that we could get like a mini stagger bar. On like the mini life bars or something like that. Because having to like constantly look at the bottom left end of the screen is pretty bad. But yeah, this is kind of it. As I said before about Scythe as Spear, when you use it, if you don't get stunned out of the attack, it can be used to trigger your self-ignite as well. If I can find the boss, it'll be a little bit easier to show, hopefully. But yeah, this is the damage again in a tier 14 map. It doesn't have any mods on it, so there is that. but even if it had like 30% monster res and stuff like that, you could strip that off, and with better gear you're going to survive much better than this character currently does at level 76 as well. There's a lot more that can be done with it, and it can, I reckon it can be a lot stronger. Stun myself. Spam those flasks. Stun myself again. The good thing is, if you can get tanky enough that you don't need to bother with blocking, you can basically just hold Incinerate forever. Did I get any? Of course I didn't. Fuck it. That'll do. This video's long enough already. So basically, yeah, that's kind of the gist of it. Walk around, be hit, crit with Thorns, ignite stuff in a circle around you. One thing I will say is if you do play this, this green circle is your presence, but the effect that you see when this triggers, the sort of AoE fire effect, doesn't scale with your presence. So, although it might not look like your AoE is increasing, it actually is. This is the actual ignite size. This green circle that you see, it's almost screen wide. So, just something to keep in mind. One thing I didn't speak about either is these other charms. This one, Arakaali's Gift, grants you immunity to poison. Is used when you become poisoned. You recover life equal to a percentage of your mana flask, and mana equal to a percentage of your life flask. This is kind of why I wanted to split damage between life and mana, where possible. This isn't super noticeable. Again, you do have to wait the duration of the charm before it can trigger again, so it's not like you're constantly getting this. Another reason why I wanted to try Bujuborn. And then Forsaken Bangle, if you had capped Chaos Res, or at least a decent Chaos Res value, this would be very good. It's used when you take Chaos damage from a hit. Because of this node, it means that you can trigger it from physical damage as well as Chaos damage. And I was trying Apep's Supremacy, I think it's called, which is a focus that gives 20% of elemental damage is converted to Chaos, and also a 25% chance for you to be poisoned, which means that you could trigger both of these from all damage you take, but I didn't have enough Chaos Res and enough life to not be using a real shield. With more investment, with more levels, I think that would probably be the more optimal option for tankiness, potentially, especially being able to turn the energy shield from the focus into mana for a bigger life pool. But yeah, for Forsaken Bangle, the reason why you use it is 50% of chaos damage you prevent when hit is recouped as life and mana during the effect. So while the charm is active, 50% of the chaos damage that you prevent when hit is recouped as life and mana. So with a high chaos res number, this would have a lot more effect than it does on this character currently, because low chaos res value, low chaos damage prevented, low amount recovered. That was kind of it. I hopefully will do more with this. If I do improve this in any way, I'll make another video. But this is kind of just to show the idea of what this could potentially be if you had more currency than I do. But yeah, thanks for watching, and if you try it out, let me know.